Today on BenchBriefs, we're looking at a significant case from the federal court that touches on the intersection of Indigenous rights and government action. Laboucan v. Canada is a story about urgent legal protection and the challenges of balancing constitutional rights with public interests. At the heart of this case is Mr. Laboucan, an Indigenous person who sought an interlocutory injunction against the government of Canada. An interlocutory injunction is a temporary court order that aims to prevent harm before a full trial can take place. Laboucan claimed that certain government measures were infringing on his Aboriginal rights, rights that are protected under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Concerned that these government actions would cause irreversible harm to his constitutional rights, he turned to the courts to stop the government in its tracks, at least until the matter could be fully litigated. So, what exactly happened? While the specific government measures aren't detailed in the case summary, the key point is that Laboucan believed these actions violated his rights as an Indigenous person. This prompted him to seek urgent judicial intervention. The goal was to get the court to issue an injunction that would halt the government's measures while the full legal dispute was still being worked out. This kind of injunction is not granted lightly because it can interfere with government policies and actions, sometimes on short notice. The federal court had to carefully weigh several important legal questions. First, should the court grant this interlocutory injunction? To answer that, the court needed to apply the well-established test for interlocutory injunctions, but with a twist. This case involved constitutional and Aboriginal law claims, which can be more complex than typical civil disputes. The court's analysis focused on the balance of convenience. This means comparing the potential harm to Laboucan if the injunction wasn't granted against the harm to the government or the public if it was. The court had to ask, was Laboucan's claim of Aboriginal rights infringement strong enough to justify stopping the government's actions temporarily? And would the damage to Laboucan's rights outweigh any negative effects on the government's ability to carry out its policies or on the public interest? Another key question was how to properly apply the interlocutory injunction test in the context of constitutional rights. Usually, courts are cautious about granting injunctions that interfere with government decisions, especially when public interests are involved. But when constitutional rights, particularly those of Indigenous peoples, are at stake, courts may take a more protective approach to prevent serious and irreparable harm. In this case, the court's role was to navigate these competing concerns. On one side was Laboucan's urgent claim that his Aboriginal rights were likely being infringed. On the other was the government's interest in carrying out its policies and the broader public interest that might be affected by halting those policies. The court had to find a fair and legally sound way to balance these interests. Why does this case matter beyond the immediate dispute? Laboucan versus Canada highlights how the courts approach urgent requests to protect Indigenous rights when government actions are involved. It underscores the importance of interlocutory injunctions as a tool for safeguarding constitutional rights before full trials can be completed. The case also illustrates the careful balancing act courts perform when constitutional and Aboriginal law claims intersect with government policies. For Indigenous peoples in Canada, this case is a reminder that the legal system can provide timely protection against government actions that may threaten their rights. For governments and policymakers, it serves as a caution to carefully consider the potential constitutional implications of their actions and to be prepared for judicial scrutiny, especially when those actions affect Indigenous communities. In the bigger picture, Laboucan vs. Canada contributes to the evolving dialogue about how courts protect Aboriginal rights and the role of interlocutory injunctions in that process. It demonstrates the judiciary's willingness to engage thoughtfully with complex charter claims and to ensure that constitutional protections are not just theoretical, but can be enforced promptly when needed. Thank you for listening to BenchBriefs. We hope you found this exploration of Laboucan vs. Canada insightful. Join us next time for another episode where we break down important legal cases shaping Canada's justice landscape. Until then, take care.